Hello, welcome once again to Political Dharma with Alan Zundel. Today, I will comment on two news stories from the previous week. In one, Dr. Cornell West has entered the race for president in 2024. I'll be looking at the questions of whether he will be able to get on enough ballots to give voters an opportunity to vote for him. And if he does, will that then result in a spoiler election in which Donald Trump is once again able to win the presidency? The second story is a little more fantastic. It is a government whistleblower who has revealed what he's heard, that the U.S. military has retrieved vehicles not of human origin, has been studying them, and is hiding it from the public and from the Congress. My questions about that will be: how much credence should we lend to these reports? What should we think about them? And what does that tell us about our government? So thanks for watching. Let's dig into the first report. Dr. Cornell West has announced his candidacy for president of the United States with the People's Party. Now, Dr. Cornell West is a prominent scholar. He's taught at Harvard, Princeton, Yale, other universities, and is currently at the Union Theological Seminary in New York. He's written books and articles. He's made public appearances, lectures, discussions, interviews. He acted as a surrogate for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 presidential campaign, and I think in the 2020 as well. He's spoken to audiences. He's been a social and political activist for decades. He's just turned 70 years old, so he's about a year younger than me, because I'm going to soon turn 71. So he's been at this for a long time. He's well known in progressive circles. His views largely align with mine in that he hasn't come out of, but he is rooted within the tradition of Christian socialism, which I've discussed in a number of episodes of this video series or podcast series over the last few months. What he's done is he's made an ethical case for socialism, and it's based largely on the traditions of Christianity that have to do with freeing the oppressed and helping the poor and all that. So that's the kind of positions he's taking in our politics. He's against the militarization of our society and our empire across the world. He wants to see more help for the working class and the poor, and et cetera. You kind of get the picture. He's a progressive, he's a socialist, and I find him very much worth listening to. In fact, I listened to him in an interview with Sabby Sabs, who did a very good interview with him, and he had some interesting things to say. So let me turn to these questions now about his potential for reaching a lot of voters. The People's Party that he's running on the ballot of, they only have one state in which they are currently on the ballot. People's Party came out of the 2016 Bernie Sanders campaign. Nick Brana, who had been working in that campaign, decided we needed to form a third party on the left because the Democrats deprived Bernie of the nomination, as they are wont to do in a little bit of an underhanded, coordinated fashion. So he decided to try to form a third party, the People's Party, started a movement for the People's Party. Now, Bernie Sanders declined to participate in it, but a number of other fairly prominent figures have, including Dr. Cornell West, who was there at the founding. As I said, the People's Party only has a ballot line in one state, has never run a candidate before. It went through a lot of turmoil in its growing pains. Hasn't grown very much, so I don't know if you could call it growing pains, but in its pains to get organized, there are accusations against Nick Brana, the founder and prime mover of this party, was accused of sexual harassment, and he and his father of financial irregularities. But he invited Dr. West to run on with the People's Party, and Dr. West accepted that. So what does this mean? Will Dr. West be able to get on more ballots than just the Florida ballot, which the People's Party currently has a ballot line in? I think, yeah. I think there's a very good chance he can get in a number of states. And my reason for saying that is because of the examples of Ross Perot and Ralph Nader. In 1992, Ross Perot announced in early 1992, he went on television and announced that he would run for the presidency if his supporters could get him on the ballot in all 50 states. Lo and behold, people got organized, and in 7 months, he was on the ballot in all 50 states. He ran a pretty erratic campaign, but he did get a very significant number of votes in the general election. And more importantly, for our purposes, he did get on a lot of ballots, and that was without the endorsement of a particular nationally rooted, nationally covering, or nationwide political party. He got on the ballot as the candidate of a couple of very small parties in particular states, but mostly he got on the ballot as an independent candidate. I think that may have included a few states where he was a write-in candidate, but for the most part, he was on the ballot. So that shows that it can be done very quickly if you have an enthusiastic movement behind you. Ralph Nader, in 1996, he ran for president, in a sense affiliated with the Green Party, but not their formal nominee, and he challenged them to see if they could organize to support his campaign, and in the process, they could help build their party. By 1996, the Green Party had about 7 states in which it had a ballot line. It did not have a wide nationwide presence, had never run a presidential candidate before. So they got together and they did fairly well. They got on the ballot in 22 states. So the Green Party was able to grow the number of states in which it had a party with a ballot line, and it grew up its membership as well. Nader ran again in 2000, again to help build up the Green Party, and in the process to present his own views on political issues and present his own policy prescriptions. So they gave him a platform for doing this, and he in turn helped build the Green Party. They got on the ballot in that race in 2000 on 43 states, which is almost all the states. So it shows it can be done. You can build up a party by having a prominent and gifted candidate. And I think Dr. Cornell West is well known enough among progressive voters, and he's a very good speaker. He has public presence to be taken seriously, and I think he could probably do this. Now, he will probably have to rely on, in some states, on getting on the ballot as some other minor party. I don't think the People's Party is going to be able to organize in all 50 states, but here in Oregon, for example, we have a Progressive Party of Oregon that I think would love to make him their nominee. All they have to do is hold their convention, decide that he's going to be the nominee, and he would be in the ballot here in Oregon. And I think that may be possible in a few other states as well. One of the questions here is should Dr. West pursue the nomination of the Green Party? Now, after the 2000 election, where Al Gore lost to George Bush and Ralph Nader was accused of being a spoiler, there was a blowback within and toward the Green Party, which set them back quite a bit. They lost a lot of members. They began to lose ballot lines across the country. It's been up and down since then. Currently, I think they're only on about 16 ballot lines in various states, so they could use a boost. If Dr. Cornell West became the nominee of the Green Party, I think he could help rebuild the party and revitalize it. But will the Green Party accept him? That's the million-dollar question. I don't know if millions applies to the Green Party, but that's the big question, because the Green Party now has a process that has multiple steps in it. Various state parties have to, as well as in both states where they have a ballot line, as well as in states where they don't, they elect delegates to a national convention, very much like the major parties, and then choose their nominee at that convention. So it means that any candidate who wants the nomination of the Green Party has to understand that process, has to be ready to organize early to get delegates in place, to get them selected in various states, get them to the convention in enough numbers that they can get the nomination, persuade enough people that they're worth doing. In other words, you can't just get together a quick convention and nominate. There's no body to do that, as there is in very small parties. Green Party has a much more involved process. I think the only way this could happen is if a couple of insiders, a good number of insiders within the Green Party, decided they wanted to support Dr. West as a nominee. They coordinated with this campaign in order to guide them through the process of getting the delegates, getting the nomination, and then getting on their ballot lines where they have them, and helping them build parties in other states, create new ballot lines again, and to get them on more ballots. Now, so on the Green Party side, it's questionable whether he'll be able to find that kind of support. I think he will find some support, but will be enough to get him all the way through the process and get the nomination. That's a little more doubtful. And on his side, in the interview I saw, I think I said it was with Savvy Sabs, very good interview. Hope I'm not just repeating myself. Maybe. He said that they had not approached him about being their nominee. So it seemed like he was just letting it go, like, well, we'll see if they want to approach me. On the other hand, Nick Brana did approach him, so he agreed to run with the People's Party. There seems to be a marriage of convenience there between West and Nick Brana, in which West would get a platform for his perspective on the important political issues and the directions we should be going on to get them into the public discussion. And meanwhile, Brana, who has been a controversial figure even within the People's Party, can build his party, and I call it his party for a reason because he seems to have a lot of control over it. He can build his party into a more significant presence, get more organizations in more states get on the ballot. That seems to be his. So what is his incentive? If he's going to play any significant role in West's campaign, what would be his incentive to help West get the nomination of the Green Party? Not much, I would think, because he'd rather have people organizing for the People's Party than organizing for the Green Party. Long tradition on the left of organizations competing with each other instead of finding ways to cooperate for the mutual benefit. So that particular part of it, I don't know if much is going to happen. I don't know if he's going to get the Green Party nomination. It's a possibility. Could help him, could help the Green Party. We'll have to wait and see, but I do think there's a good chance he can get on a number of ballots. Second question, now this is getting to be evening and there's cars going by, and every time they do, there's a reflection through the window of their windshield or their side window, and it floats across my face because frankly, I tried to do this video repeated times this afternoon, didn't come out right. And so this is my final try. I hope this one works. But if he is able to get on the ballot in a number of states and enough people vote for him, is that have the potential to swing the election away from Biden, President Biden, current President Biden, to Donald Trump once again, who look like at this point the likely nominees? Well, I would say it's way too early to worry about that prospect. If you're worried about whether to vote for him or not, that'll happen later after the nominees are all chosen. We don't even know if Biden and Trump are going to be the official nominees yet. I've lived through a number of presidential campaigns, and unexpected things always do happen. You don't know what's going to happen in this campaign. Trump could be indicted and he could be in the middle of a trial, not have the ability to run a campaign. He might turn a lot of Republicans against him. Both he and Biden are getting up in years. They could get too sick to run, or one of them could die. Maybe even both of them could die. That's a possibility. Other candidates may get into the race. I think West is stealing a little of the thunder from Robert Kennedy Jr. and Marianne Williamson in the Democratic side. And so they may not have much traction, but if better candidates who are more trusted, there's a lot of, anti-vax kind of stigmatization of those two candidates. Other candidates might decide to enter the race if they see Dr. West getting a lot of traction and they're afraid that the party might lose because of that. They'll try to find a way to suck in the progressive vote. Again, find a different candidate or get their candidates to take more progressive positions. But it's too late. It's too early to worry about spoilers. Right now, what we should be thinking about is picking a candidate who best articulates your perspective and can bring it to the public discussion. You should support that candidate in ways of talking them up to friends and neighbors and on social media and whatnot. If you can afford to donate money, early on is a good time to donate it, so it gives them a better opportunity of making their candidacy credible to the media and get them more attention, allow them to hire staff and all the rest. So since he has a perspective, I would really like seen brought to the discussion in order to shape what the media and the public is hearing about as they start to pay more attention to the presidential race. I think it's important that he have his voice in there, and so at this point, I'm supporting him. I don't know who else is going to come into the race or what's going to develop, but at this point, this is why I'm talking about him in part is because I think he's a candidate worth looking at and supporting. Worry about the spoiler question later. I got opinions on that as well, which I'll let you know if the time comes, or maybe before. That's a long way off, isn't it? So that's my take on Professor West's candidacy. Now let's get to the second subject, which is a little more out there, which is there was a former Air Force veteran and Navy intelligence officer has come forward both in testifying to congressional committees under oath and to the media that as a part of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, which was set up by Congress, he has heard from a number of government officials that the U.S. military over the decades has retrieved the remnants of crashes of aerial vehicles, and in some cases, even their the beings aborted that were not of human origin. That is, UFOs crashed to the earth, and the U.S. military has recovered pieces of these crafts. I think in all there's about 12 crafts, maybe one or two, or some are intact, according to what he has said. So this is what's being reported in the news. David Grush, he testified, as I said, under oath to the intelligence committees of the U.S. Congress. And what do we think about this? What can we make of this? Well, the reporters who are reporting it, Leslie Keene and Ralph Blumenthal, brought this to the mainstream media, and they were not touching it. They wanted more time to investigate it, I assume. They got it on the Debrief news outlet, which is not the most highly regarded or even known outlet, but it's quickly spread to other news sources, including the same day on News Nation, which is a streaming and cable-based news network. So got out about a week ago, earlier this week, and a lot of talk about it. And what do we make of this? I would say that Grush is a very credible witness. He's had a lot of people vouch for his career and his integrity. His background would show that he had some position in which he could gather some information about what's going on about UFOs in the U.S. government. So he seems like a credible witness, but we have to remember that what he's telling us is at least secondhand to him, maybe even third hand or more. So he's telling us what other people told him, which has to do with crashed vehicles, non-human origin, perhaps alien beings, bodies of alien beings, parts of bodies. Military has retrieved these, has been studying them, has been doing some reverse engineering, which means they're trying to figure out how these materials were made, how these vehicles were constructed so they can use it for our purposes, or I should say the military's purposes, which would essentially mean militarization, weaponization of this advanced technology, if indeed it exists. Disturbing news, to be sure. So what do we make of this? Now, let me give you a little backstory on UFOs in the government, just to set up my opinion of this, which is this, these reports have been going on my whole lifetime. And the US government has investigated UFOs since before my lifetime. They started in 1947. This continued into the 50s and 60s when I was young, and I was seeing reports of strange aerial phenomena and encounters with aliens and all this stuff periodically throughout my childhood and teen years. Saw books. When I was a teenager, they released a report on the Blue Book Project, which started in the early 50s and ended in 1969. I read that as a teenager. They were investigating these UFO phenomena and UFO incidents. What have we learned about that since then? The program shut down in 1969, but what we've learned about those attempts to investigate by the government, by the military, was that number one, the CIA formed a panel composed of scientists and engineers with the charge of determining what to do about the public response to these UFO reports. It seems they were worried that our enemies, read communists, could take advantage of this UFO craze to feed disinformation to the public in order to get our society in a panic and then take advantage of that somehow. So it seemed like that was their motive, but we don't know if they actually did this. But the panel recommended, this is the Robertson panel, named after I think the person who chaired the panel. In their report, they recommended that the government do its own disinformation campaign to debunk as many of these reports as possible, calm down the public, tamp down the public interest so people are not, in a panic about it, and also to hide as much of this. If they couldn't explain it, hide it, just not reveal it to the public. They had hundreds of cases that they couldn't explain. They found plenty that they could explain plausibly, plenty that they could try to explain not so plausibly, and I can remember some of them, like in Michigan, there was an incident that they blamed on swamp gas of all things. Anyway, they tried to debunk most of the stuff, and we also know there were Air Force regulations that kept classified any reports of UFO incidents that could not be easily explained. So there are attempts by the government, there are recommendations, first of all, with the CIA's involvement, recommendations of a disinformation campaign and hiding stuff. And we know the Air Force actually did start classifying material, trying to hide it from the public. And then finally, one of the principals of the Blue Book Project, Alan Hynek, came out later, a couple of years after it ended, and he said that the military officials that they were trying to work with did not take the investigators seriously, did not do a very good job of investigating these thoroughly, seemed to be more interested in debunking reports of UFOs than in actually figuring out what really happened. And he went from being a skeptic at the beginning of his participation, thinking something is really going on here that we need to know about, and the government has been covering it up or not really investigating it with much due diligence. So we know all that. Now, you may remember in 2017, there was a breaking news report that made the front page of the New York Times. This was by the same reporters that are breaking this story this week. That's Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal. In 2017, at the end of the year, they found out about a new secret investigation run by the government that had been set up by Senator Harry Reid, allocating money to it to collect information on these UFOs and present a report. Now, it wasn't a lot of money. It was like $22 million. And a lot of it went to an aerospace company that was run by a guy who had connections with Reid involving UFOs going way back. They both had a mutual interest. And so anyway, Reid helped create this new program and fund it. And then this guy, his company, Bigelow Aerospace, his name is Robert Bigelow, his company, Bigelow Aerospace Company. They got a lot of the contracts for doing this. Not much came out of it, but they did collect a lot of these videos that were revealed in the news reports and to Congress. I'm sure you remember seeing them, like videos of jet fighters recording strange phenomena and being freaked out by what they saw and all the rest. So we know there's a lot that's going on there, that the government has collected information that wasn't getting out to the public, that they had information they were not really compiling, and information that they weren't interested in making known to the Congress or the American public or to the world at large. So we know those things. I'm getting a little off track here. So 2017, that was reported, caused Congress to then set up this unidentified aerial phenomena task force that David Grosh was a member of. And in his attempts to investigate this, he learned of the Retrieval Task Force. What was the name of that? Something about retrieving things. Anyway, he learned of this, and they didn't allow him access to it, but he talked to a number of people about it. He found them to be credible, and he also found out where these vehicle pieces are allegedly being held and who's in charge of it. He hasn't made that information public, but he has testified to the Congress about it. And actually tonight, probably right now, I think, on News Nation, he's going to be giving an hour-long interview about all this. And then News Nation is going to be doing an hour-long analysis following the interview. So we may learn more details. What I think about all this, there's two possibilities. One is that somebody in the government was feeding false information to Grush for some purpose. What would that purpose be? That's the question. The other possibility is that it actually is the way he says it is, that there were people who were in the know, who learned of this, thought it should be made publicly available, but the military was hiding it. So they came forward to him. He then came forward to the Congress, and he's seeking protection as a whistleblower. He's testifying to congressional intelligence committees, and he testified to the Inspector General of Intelligence. And then someone brought information about this to the reporters, and it came out. That's where we're at right now. So he was part of that task force. And maybe it's true. You know, some of that information might be distorted. Maybe the reports are exaggerated, but the government is essentially covering up something that they know about UFOs that would be more explosive than the videos of wobbly lights and that sort of thing. So the first possibility, why would anybody be deliberately feeding the public disinformation about this if there was nothing to it? That's the part I get stuck on. I can only think of a couple possibilities. The leading one would be they want to build up public interest in order to then show that when the Congress begins investigating, they can find no evidence of this program, and therefore public interest will be suppressed and there'll be more skepticism toward future reports. So in other words, it's just like in the past, an attempt to tamp down public interest in it by getting them interested and then saying, well, nothing there, folks. Why would they be doing that? The only reason is, at this point, nobody's going to panic about UFO reports. Nobody's, why? So many people already believe there's something going on there, and they'd be, like, yeah, I knew it all along. So it's not like we're going to have mass panic like we might have had in the past. If this was a government program to slowly leak real information over time to get us to the point where most of the public would be kind of, they found UFOs and bodies with, so what? Who cares? That seems to be where we're at. It's like, not so much who cares, but, oh, that's interesting, but, I knew it all along. That seemed like it might have worked if that was their intention all along. But why would they give us fake information if nothing had been found there? I cannot come up with a plausible reason. On the other hand, since the government has a history of covering stuff up, lying about it, think of the Iraq War, weapons of mass destruction, think of Watergate. Government lies a lot. The military hides stuff a lot, especially any programs that have to do with weapons development. Think of the atomic bomb development project. They tried to hide that. They kept that hidden until they were able to explode bombs on Japan. So there's a long history of the military and the government doing that kind of thing. It makes more sense to me. Don't know what's really happening because, again, these are second-hand or maybe third-hand reports, could be exaggerated. But something's there, in my opinion, something's going on, and I really like to know what it is. So I'm going to be watching the story with interest. What does this tell you about politics and government in the United States and in the world? Well, it doesn't seem as though evidence of alien beings is going to draw the world and the governments of the world together in a unified front, or that we'll be approaching them peacefully, or that they are here to try to communicate with us and express their desire to help us avoid catastrophe. Now, on all those scores, it seems that, first of all, our governments and other governments seem to be competing to retrieve and study this material. They want to weaponize it. If these beings are aware of what's going on here at all, studying us, they're finding out that we're dangerous, unpredictable creatures that are prone to violence. So they would not, they want to have hands off on us or maybe disable some of our weapons, which may be part of what's going on. So that's my take on it. I think there's something there. I think best explanation is that they're covering stuff up and they're not telling us the whole truth. And that what it means is our government system around the world is pretty screwed up, and the human race is hell-bent on doing the wrong thing with new opportunities as they arise. Cynical take, I wish things were different. Maybe they will change. That's what we're all working and hoping for, right? Okay, so that's my presentation for today. I enjoyed this week and last week talking about news items, giving you my take and my perspective on them. If you liked what you heard here, you'd like to see me do more of it, please do like and subscribe either to my YouTube channel or to the podcast on various podcast platforms. Hope to be back next week with more stuff. And once again, thank you to Patty Rose for providing the music for the intro and outro parts of this show. Maybe next week. Bye.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus. The moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.